Dave Burkett here, live on Radio Row, Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Pleasure to be joined today by DJ Dozier. You may know him from the Minnesota Vikings, but he also played a season for the Detroit Lions in 1991, and he was a draft pick of the Detroit Tigers coming out of high school. Right. Here with Sports Innovation X, and we'll get into that here in a little bit, but let's start with your football career and specifically your time in Detroit. How, again, I think a lot of people associate you with the Vikings, but how fondly do you remember your Lions years?
Yeah, no, that was a special season because it was one of Detroit's best seasons at the time. I think we went 12-4.
Yep,
that season, and obviously ended up going into playoffs. Matter of fact, I think we won the division, won the playoffs, and unfortunately couldn't get through Washington in the NFC Championship. But for me, that was a special team because it was a young team. Something that I felt like getting to the playoffs, that was the first of many potential playoff runs for that particular group of athletes. And but it was also a great group of kids. I mean, group of guys. Of course, Barry, second to none. Glover and Lomas, Brown. I mean, great people, and obviously great athletes.
So Lions fans remember that season well because before the current regime, that was the last Lions team to win a playoff game, 91. I did a story a few years back. Barry Sanders turned 50, I think, and I was looking for 20 great stories about number 20 that, were kind of never told or forgotten. Give me your best Barry Sanders story, something that stood out to you about him during your years with him, sharing a room with him in some ways. Yeah.
Barry, special, obviously. But that's both on the field and off. I've got a funny story, but the going back to, for me, I always like to do investigation and research on why guys are special, why they've hit a certain level. And so one day I was walking into the locker room after practice, and Barry was coming out of the weight room area, and I'd seen him do that 3 days in a row. And I asked him, I said, Barry, I said, what are you doing when you go in the weight room? He says, I work out. I said, okay, but it's during the season, and you mean you're working out every day? He said, yeah. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, what do you do? He says, well, I do 3 sets of power cleans, 3 sets of 8 power cleans every day. And I thought, I've always loved that exercise. And, it's one of the most, or one of the greatest exercises for explosiveness.
Yeah.
And so when I realized he was doing that literally every day, I understood to a certain degree why he was so explosive on the field. And we shared a couple other meals together off the field, off the road, at home. And again, special human being. We spent a lot of time talking in the hotel about different things. But, one of the funny stories is we were getting ready for the playoffs, back in 92. And our coach knew that Barry at times would fall asleep during the meeting.
That was one of the stories I used when I wrote that. Loma's telling me, I think, if someone about him falling asleep on the sideline at times.
Right, right. And so the coach sort of sets the tone for the meeting and says, okay, hey, guys, it's playoff time. Barry, I need you to stay awake.
Did he stay awake?
Well, here's what happened. So Barry literally, instead of sitting in the seat, he sits on the back of the chair, puts his feet in the chair, and to make sure he doesn't go to sleep. And sure enough, the man starts nodding, and the rest of us just lost it. We lost it. The coach, normally is in front of us.
Is this Wayne? Or
no, not Wayne Fonts. I don't remember his name, but he was sitting in front of us. So he would never turn around. So literally, when he hears us laughing, he's like, Barry, turn, wake up! You can't fall asleep.
Oh, he was great. He was a great player. Obviously,
Absolutely.
Lions fans know that. The work ethic, I'm sure, was part of it.
Yes,
and,
sir.
It's amazing
Great
that
human
he
being.
could do some of those things for sure. Again, DJ Dozier, former Lions player, a two-sport athlete at the professional level, which was rare. I mean, how did you manage, and I know it wasn't the exact same time, but how did you manage your decision, first of all, in terms of which one to pursue, and then second of all, playing both at the professional level?
Yeah, for me, it's really a great story. Even though I didn't play from a baseball perspective, play in the big leagues as long as I has anticipated would have liked to. I cut my career short, but the story again is that I was actually supposed to play baseball in college. So when the Detroit Tigers drafted me in high school, the reason that they drafted me in a late round is because they knew I was going to Penn State, but they wanted to hold my rights for 2 years. So they called me up night before and said, look, because I was a decent player in baseball. And so they said, look, we're going to take we're going to take you in the 17th, 18th round, and we're going to hold your rights because we believe that, after you've played baseball for a couple of years, then, you'll be ready for whatever comes next. As it happened, so the deal I had with Paterno at Penn State was I could play baseball after my second year football.
Football only as a freshman, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so after my sophomore year of football at Penn State, I had to get arthroscopic surgery. So didn't play baseball. Then the next year, the baseball team, was expecting me to be there. And I decided I wasn't going to play baseball because I was now getting ready for the potential move to the NFL. And so as it turned out, I didn't play in 4 years. And so for me, what started to happen is, baseball went away. It just faded away. And so in 87, when I was drafted by the Vikings, the Minnesota Twins were playing the St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series that same season or that same year. And so I ended up going to 3 or 4 of the home games. And somewhere in between that second and third game, there was something clicked.
You missed it.
I missed it, and I believed that I could do it. And I remember looking down at home plate saying, I can do that. And so that was 87. In 1989, 2 years later, I literally could not stop thinking about baseball after our football season was over. And so I decided I had to do something. And so I called my agent. He thought I was nuts. And I said, look, call the Phillies, call, the Twins, and also call the Tidewater Times, which was the Mets AAA affiliate at the time. Because that gentleman, the general manager for that team, said for years, he kept saying, hey, DJ, no matter what, don't forget about baseball. And give me a call when you're ready.
Wow.
And so when my agent, Brett, called him, he said, give me about 20 minutes. I'll call you back. He called Joe McIlvaney, who eventually was the GM for the Mets. At the time, McIlvaney was the head of minor league sports. McIlvaney is the guy that scouted me from the Mets organization. Still had the scouting report from high school. So what happened was, this is a phenomenal set of events. They gave me a tryout in 89 and wanted to sign me at the end of that 6 weeks. And but the Vikings would let me sign. So I ended up signing in 1990. So that 7 years.
Wow.
7 years. So for me to play 7 years or sign a contract 7 years after not playing.
Yeah.
Every day on that field was a gift.
That's amazing. Yeah. I see the draft now. We see the draft now that Detroit hosted the draft last year. We know how big the NFL draft was. Baseball even, the draft now in baseball, it's televised and it's a big production. The first day they have the red carpet. What was it like for you when were you sitting in your high school classroom and you get a phone call? I mean, how did you even learn that you got drafted by the Tigers?
Less. Oh, when
the Tigers. Yeah, Tigers baseball.
No, it's actually in my parents' house.
Okay.
I mean, they literally gave me a phone call because there was no television. You would only get a call. Hey, yeah, we drafted you, and they all, oh, great.
You go about your day. Essentially, yeah. Did you give much thought to signing with the Tigers right away, or because you were going to Penn State?
No. It was a known fact that they knew that I was going to sign. I mean, again, the strategy from their perspective, they knew that I was going to sign a contract. Most of the scouts from the pro teams, really what happened was at some point when they realized I was going to Penn State, and that the only way that I was going to sign a baseball contract, really, I probably wouldn't have done it even if this would have happened. But my coach, my baseball coach at the time said, hey, if you give DJ a $500,000 contract, he'll think about signing.
Big money, yeah.
Right. And of course, back then, that was 5 times more than what everybody was getting in the first round.
Yeah.
So most of the scouts said, hey, tell him we wish him well at Penn State.
It turned out to be a good decision, obviously, at the NFL career. Did you have an NFL draft story, too, before I go on?
I was when I was drafted, I was shocked, number one, that it was Minnesota, because I had already met with George Walsh with the San Francisco 49ers. The Raiders and the San Francisco 49ers were the 2 teams that were hot and heavy. So I believe that one of those was going to draft me in the first round. The 49ers were a little, they didn't think that I would be around, because I think they had the 18th pick that year. And so they said, we'll try to, scoot up in the draft, but we don't think you'll be there. But we want you. And so when I'm sitting there in my living room in college, and when they said Vikings, I was shocked. I mean, I was literally shocked. Yeah. Thrown, it was like a curveball. And, but, I tell you, I love Minnesota. I love the people there. My experience wasn't tremendous, but the atmosphere, the environment, the people, incredible.
Well, last minute or two here with DJ Dozier again, Sports Innovation X. I wanted to throw this name because I mentioned it to you ahead, just so the Lions and Tigers fans out there know. Matt Kinzer played he was a punter for the Lions briefly in 1987, relief pitcher for the Tigers in 1990, the only man to play professionally for both teams in the franchise's history. I'm going to write a little bit about him later this year, but just figured I'd throw that out there since we've got you here today.
Tremendous.
When the Lions and Vikings played in the NFC or for the NFC North title this year, Week 18, who do you root for? Lions fans will forgive you if you say Minnesota. They'll understand.
Well, now I spent more years, obviously, in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But the year I had in Detroit was special. And so I hold them up equal. I really either one, of course, for me is the best way to describe a pick. I've gone to a Minnesota Detroit game.
Yep.
And this was probably 2 years ago. And now it was in Minnesota. So in Minnesota, I was rooting for Minnesota.
For sure. You got to.
If I was in Detroit, maybe it would have differed. Yeah.
All right. One last thing on the 2-sport athlete thing. I've got kids. I know I'd discuss this with other people who have kids sometimes. And you have 4 children?
4 kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about specialization in one sport? I mean, you were able to do it multiple sports at a high level. I know there's a lot of parents out there that struggle with it, especially when their kids are coming up. What's the right time to maybe only have them play one? Should I let them keep playing them forever? My son plays a little bit of everything. That's just kind of how he is. Tell me your thoughts on specialization.
I don't like I understand the strategy, and the strategy is effective without a doubt, because the more reps you have, right,
Yeah.
the better you become at something. And so
10,000 hour rule, right? Yeah.
Right. So you become a specialist, or you become an expert at it quicker than if you're not doing it. Right. So I understand that part of it. But from a physical perspective, it's rough. It's tough, I think, on kids especially. I, of course, grew up playing 3, playing different sports. I think having the variety helps not only you mentally, but certainly physically, and you don't wear your body parts out. Yeah. I know a couple of my former teammates that have kids or had kids that were playing baseball in particular. I mean, how many kids today that are young getting that Tommy John surgery?
I've heard one of my friend's daughter's friend, her dad She's got a son at Catholic Central back by us, and he said already they had a pitcher, one of their best pitchers, blew his arm out on his first hard bullpen he threw the other day, senior in high school. Really good player, throws low 90s, but it happens. It happens a lot.
Right, and so it's overusage. So, if they can find a way, I mean, again, I understand the specialization and the time and the commitment, but I love the variety. That's what I grew up with, and I think it's effective in developing the whole athlete.
Great. All right, let's get you out of here on this. Tell me about Sports Innovation X. And I know teams are using it. I know there's it's obviously helping athletes around the country. So
absolutely,
tell everyone out there a little bit about Sports.
So, we love the fact that we're bringing technology into a space where, it's difficult, or at least in the past, it's been difficult for technology to move into the athletic realm. And so we help to bridge that gap by introducing different opportunity or different aspects of technology to the teams, to the universities, high schools even, and even youth sports. So that helps both the technology company and, of course, the teams and the organizations.
He's DJ Dozier, former Lions player, almost a former Tigers player, former Tigers draft pick. I'm Dave Burkett, Detroit Free Press, live here, Radio Row, Super Bowl 50. DJ, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.